Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up.
Israeli missiles slam into Gaza Wednesday after its military ground forces encircle Gaza City. The IDF aims to locate and disable Hamas' vast tunnel network beneath the enclave. African leaders are pushing for the renewal of a preferential U.S. trade policy that allows them duty-free access to the American market. And Africa 54 technology reporter Paul Ndiho talks to Ghana's Joshua Agyemang about tackling Ghana's STEM education challenges. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54.
Israel is facing increasing pressure from allies over the dire plight of Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Thousands of Palestinians are rushing to leave the enclave's north, many on foot, due to minimal food and water and fear of ramped-up ground fighting. Meanwhile, from the group of 7 leading industrial democracies are presenting a united front and calling for immediate action to help civilians trapped in Gaza, including pauses in the fighting to allow aid in and people out. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has left open the possibility of small pauses to deliver humanitarian aid, but has ruled out a wider ceasefire unless all hostages are freed. Israeli missiles slammed into targets in Gaza on Wednesday as its ground forces in the Gaza Strip targeted the Hamas militants' vast tunnel network beneath the enclave. Israel says its troops have advanced to the heart of the densely populated Gaza City, while Hamas says its fighters are inflicting heavy losses on the Israeli military. The number of Palestinians killed in the war has passed 10,000, according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza. In the occupied West Bank, more than 160 Palestinians have been killed in the war. More than 1,400 people in Israel have been killed, most of them in the October 7th Hamas attack that triggered the fighting. With Israel tanks surrounding Gaza City, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will assume overall security responsibility after it ends control of the territory by Hamas militants. VOA senior diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain has more.
1 month after the brutal attacks by the U.S.-designated terrorist organization Hamas, that Israel says killed 1,400 people and injured 5,400, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made headlines during an interview with ABC News.
Those who don't want to continue the way of Hamas, it certainly is not, I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility, because we've seen what happens when we don't have it. When we don't have that security responsibility, what we have is the eruption of Hamas terror on a scale that we couldn't imagine.
At the White House, National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby was asked about Netanyahu's comments.
We'll let them speak to their intentions, but we are definitely having conversations about what the post-conflict environment ought to look like and what governance in Gaza ought to look like. One thing there's absolutely no daylight on is Hamas can't be part of that equation. Can't go back to October 6th.
At the State Department Tuesday, spokesperson Vedant Patel was also asked about the future of Gaza after the current fighting ends.
Gaza is Palestinian land, and it will remain Palestinian land. And generally speaking, we do not support reoccupation of Gaza, and neither does Israel. Secretary Blinken was fairly clear about that during his travels as well.
The Secretary of State just completed another tour of the Middle East. He met with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas and indicated that the Palestinian Authority might be best suited to administer Gaza after the war. One expert who spoke to VOA said he believes a two-state solution for Israelis and Palestinians is still the best hope for a lasting peace in the region. Gilead Sher was chief of staff to former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. He spoke to VOA via Zoom from Israel.
And I believe that this goes through a rehabilitation of Gaza with a gradual integration of the Palestinian Authority with the help of the Saudis, perhaps, the Gulf states, Egypt, Jordan, the United States, the Sunni axis, the Sunni Western axis could help that come a reality.
Blinken left the Middle East and headed to Asia for a G7 meeting. But the Israel-Hamas war was still very much a top issue of discussion.
Very much appreciate the words of support and sympathy in the wake of the horrific attack by Hamas that did result, as you noted, in American victims as well as American hostages. And this is a very important moment as well for G7 to come together in the face of this crisis and to speak as we do with one clear voice.
Protests of U.S. military support for Israel followed Blinken to Japan as international outrage grows over the mounting civilian death toll in Gaza. At least 10,328 people in Gaza have been killed and 25,900 have been wounded, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry said Tuesday. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
For more on Israel-Hamas war, I'm joined live from Jerusalem by VOA correspondent Jan Bochert. Jan, tell us what you've seen today and heard.
Hello, Star. Good evening. This is another day of violence here in Israel and in Gaza, the West Bank. The Israeli forces say they reached downtown Gaza City. This is the heart of Hamas, and the battles there are going really aggressive right now. Hamas said they destroyed 15 vehicles of the Israeli forces, but it's impossible to confirm this information. At the same time, the Ministry of Health in Gaza says like the hospitals are about to stop operating due to the lack of medicine, the lack of fuel. Situation remains really difficult there.
You talk about the situation being difficult, but at the same time, we're hearing that, some former Israeli settlers are returning actually to Gaza Strip to rebuild their homes. What's the reaction to that?
They pretending to do that. I talked to some of them. They said they are already planning to rebuild the settlements there. There were 22 settlements in Gaza until 2005, around 10,000 people, Israeli Jews, were living there. Officially, the government didn't say anything, but politicians now are speaking about it. And there's a lot of criticism about this idea to move the Israeli settlers back to Gaza.
And is there any reaction to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying that Israel plans to maintain security over Gaza for an unknown period of time?
Secretary of State Blinken said this is the Gaza belongs to the Palestinians, belongs to the Palestinian Authority. Of course, in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority told that Gaza belongs to them, but nobody knows what's going to happen after this war. And Israel seems decided to control the Strip after defeating Hamas.
Jan, many thanks for your reporting. Stay safe. VOA correspondent Jan Bochert reporting live for us from Jerusalem. Israel's airstrikes and military operations in retaliation for the October 7th Hamas terror attacks are broadly supported inside Israel, but signs of dissent are emerging among some Jewish American communities. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias reports.
The Hamas terror attacks against Israelis shocked Jewish Americans who have held rallies in support of Israel and in memory of the victims. Yair Lev, originally from Jerusalem, shared his views during a rally in Philadelphia.
It's about condemning the worst crime in the last 80 years, anti-Semite, anti-the Jews. And we can't tolerate this, and we have to do something, all of us, no matter what the religion or race, to do whatever we can to support Israel in these terrible times.
Most Jewish Americans polled by Pew Research Center in 2019 and 2020 said they believed caring about Israel was an essential or important part of what being Jewish means to them. But data also showed emerging differences between the younger and older generations, which some analysts say still prevail.
There's much stronger identification with Israel, a much stronger sense that that Israel is part of our identity and part of what it is to be Jewish among older Jews and among more religious Jews, Jews that are both unaffiliated and are younger. You would find that probably a majority of them don't actually very strongly identify with Israel.
Some of the younger Jewish Americans who protested on the U.S. Capitol grounds in mid-October say they were devastated by the Hamas sneak terrorist attack, but disapprove of Israel's military response and the ensuing humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
We are bringing that grief and that pain into the streets to say that this war, this assault on the Palestinian people that is happening right now is not going to keep our relatives safe. It's not going to bring our loved ones back.
Other Jewish American demonstrators have raised concerns about Washington's stance on the conflict.
President Biden, open your eyes. Look at what's happening in Gaza. Look at the devastation in Gaza. If you want to be able to live with yourself, you need to stand up and end the genocide and demand a ceasefire right now.
There needs to be pressure from the United States and from other countries to stop this madness and the war.
Asher Kaufman, a professor of history and peace studies, noted that as Israel's counterattack continues and the death toll from the violence climbs, it becomes more difficult to hold nuanced views on the conflict.
You can condemn the actions that Hamas perpetrated on October 7th. And at the same time, you could also be critical of the Israeli continued occupation of the West Bank and the siege of Gaza. These two do not cancel each other out in my view, in my mind. But it's very hard now to make these complex observations. People have no patience.
In Kaufman's view, the divide could become even deeper if the humanitarian situation in Gaza worsens. Verónica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
The Milken Institute Future of Health Summit 2023 is an annual event where leaders, stakeholders, investors and advocates gather to address pressing issues affecting medical research, preventative care and public health. This year's event is here in Washington. And Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu is at the event and joining us live now. Lino, tell us, what are the attendees going to take home from this summit?
Hello, Esther. So this is the 6th edition of the Milken Institute's Future of Health Summit. And this year, more than 1,200 people are gathered here at the Salamander Hotel to discuss ways to collaborate. As you can see behind me, people are networking and talking about new ways to address some of the biggest global health challenges. But most importantly, finding new solutions. On the agenda, they talk about health equity. So the goal for this year, the theme is closing the gap, bringing health to everyone. And what some of the attendees are discussing is how they can use innovations to find ways to tackle issues like pandemic or even neglected tropical diseases, public health issues such as maternal mortality. So it is an important event that happens every year. And this year, COVID-19 was also on the agenda because it was an eye-opener for policymakers, medical experts, and stakeholders to see what can be done to improve access to health for everyone around the world.
They know some of the issues being discussed there, as you mentioned, are global health concerns, but there are some specifics for the African continent, diseases that emerge in the continent. As a health reporter, what are you going to take away from this that is of benefit to your audience?
You know, one of the things that was talked about during this summit is the next pandemic. And experts are saying that the next pandemic may come from AMR, which are antimicrobial resistance, drug resistance diseases. So this is something that is very important. They are really working to prevent this from happening, because after coming out of COVID-19, no one wants to see another pandemic. So yes, it's an important time to find out what scientists are working on, what are some of the health issues that are very critical, and how people can have access to the health they need, the healthcare they need. We saw during the pandemic that some people could not even have access to vaccine. Africa was an example. So this is an opportunity, a platform to discuss those issues and find solutions.
So who is attending? Of course, there are experts there, they're health experts. Are there some, just regular folks like me who don't understand a lot of things?
Of course, regular folks like you, like me, we have health experts. We have also politicians. We have U.S. Senator Roger Marshall, who spoke earlier today, and we have people coming from around the world. And one of the things that is worth mentioning is that the Milken Institute has announced the five selected for the prize, the Motsepe Milken Prize, that is worth $1 million. The finalists will be announced in May. Esther?
I'm sure you're going to bring us a lot of stuff right here. And for our audience, thank you very much, Lino, for your reporting. Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu reporting live for us from downtown Washington, D.C. Still to come, addressing challenges of teaching STEM in Ghana. Stay with us.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, a discussion on the African Growth and Opportunity Act. AGOA provides duty-free access to the U.S. market to a number of African countries. The program is up for renewal in 2025, but U.S. President Joe Biden wants to discuss improvements with Congress before reauthorizing it. African businesses are concerned because they want to make sure it is renewed in time. Join me, Haiti Adams, as my guests and I delve into the significance of AGOA on the continent. That's on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, the warring Sudanese army and paramilitary rapid support forces are committing to easing humanitarian aid deliveries and implementing confidence-building measures, according to mediators in talks in Jeddah and the Saudi State News Agency. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is urging Rwanda and Congo to de-escalate tensions and withdraw troops from their border following increased fighting that has displaced nearly 7 million people. Blinken spoke separately by phone with Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and Rwandan President Paul Kagame. And there are conflicting reports out of Ethiopia on Wednesday. Residents of the nation's medieval holy city of Lalibela say fighting erupted between the army and the regional militia, but Ethiopian government spokesperson Legesse Tulu disputes the reports of violence, saying that the city and its surroundings were peaceful. African leaders are pushing for renewal of a preferential U.S. trade policy that allows them duty-free access to the U.S. market that is set to expire in 2025. Kate Bartlett has the details.
These South African macadamias and dried fruits may be small individually, but they have a big impact for many of the people working at this factory called Empire State Trading, including Maxwell Sukazi.
Yeah, now I'm working there 15 years, and then it's my first job. I get it from Empire. I'm coming from a place on a rural area. There's a shortage of the job, let's say.
Sukazi supports a family of 7 on his income. He's packing product that will go to markets around the world, including to the United States under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA. Launched in 2000, AGOA is a U.S. duty-free policy for eligible countries that has been credited with job creation on the continent. But the amount of product exported to the U.S. when compared to the other main markets of Europe and China fluctuates based on market demand. Peter van der Westhuizen is one of the owners of the family-owned business.
The year before, the US probably took 50 or 60% of our crop, where this year it changed where the US probably only took 10 or 15% of our crop, where the Chinese have taken, call it 70% of our crop.
Van der Westhuizen says there are differences in doing business with each country.
It's completely different cultures to start off. Payment terms, everything is very different. The Chinese is very strong importance around relationships, etc., etc. Well, I think in the US it's more business-like. What can you offer? What can you pay? There's relationships obviously involved as well, but it's more black and white.
There are also other differences between China and the US. China is sub-Saharan Africa's largest trade partner, and the US ranks third based on 2021 World Bank numbers. At the annual AGOA summit, hosted by South Africa this year, US Trade Representative Catherine Tai told VOA Washington is prioritizing the continent.
Yes, China's footprint in the global economy in terms of trade is enormous. We know that. That is true in many of our conversations around the world. We feel very strongly that the type of partnership the United States brings and can bring is inherently different from what other partners bring. And that is why we are focused on enhancing and building on a U.S. partnership with Africa.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has called on the U.S. Congress to renew AGOA before it expires, so there can be more investments and more jobs. Kate Bartlett, VOA News, Johannesburg, South Africa.
It's time for our technology report, and tech correspondent Paul Ndiho joins us with news from Ghana. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther. Thank you. The Ghana STEM Network, an organization that brings together young, like-minded people across the country, is working hard to address some of these challenges. For more, I spoke to Joshua Agyemang, president of Ghana STEM Network in Accra, Ghana. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Paul.
You're one of those young men trying to change the tech space, innovation habits of younger people in Ghana. Bring us up to speed. What is it that you do?
I'm the current president of the Ghana STEM Network, and my work at the Ghana STEM Network is to bring all the organizations, individuals, and institutions that are driving STEM education in the country. So at the moment, we have about 6 senior high schools focusing on STEM, only STEM education. And then we have a reform in our curriculum for all the basic schools up to the pre-tertiary, also embracing STEM education. We also have a very high rise of TVET education, which focuses on skills development. So all this development going on from the government sector has also been a need for the private sector to also see how best they can also help with the acceleration of Ghana's education. So young people who are also working in the area of STEM education from the private sector in the private schools to ensure that collectively, as government is driving the public sector, the private sector to also accelerate the development transition of education system to a more practical and sustainable one.
Are you particularly focusing on developing skills or teaching people how to understand these technologies?
We needed to create an environment, a platform where like-mindedness could connect, share ideas, come together and learn. It promotes mentorship, guidance, and all that. So we have the community that we have built, and we also have skills development where we do a lot of training in the area of STEM for primary to junior high school and senior high school. This group of students are looking for learning skills, the ability to solve problems, the ability to learn on their own, the ability to be creative, and these are all 21st century skills they need. So at that level, we focus on learning skills. At the tertiary level, these are young youths who are prepared for the workforces, and they need employable skills that could help them get jobs after school. So with them, we do a lot of training focused on employable skills, And some of these are IoT. We do IoT training and courses. We do data science, AI programs and courses for them. We do 3D design and modeling that will give them practical skills after school that they can be employable. We do software engineering training too as well. Our goal is to ensure that every student in Ghana have access to practical education and 21st century skills. At the side of the R&D too, we're looking at solving critical problems facing our continent.
I was intrigued by one of the things that you said. You said you currently have a product on the market that is designed to help young creative minds learn about this new technology. Can you speak more to that?
That's right. We designed a product early this year called STEM Aid, and we came to design that as a result of our encounter with schools. So when we're doing our training programs, we use expensive resources imported into Ghana. And one of them is a Lego robotics kit costing $700, averagely 7,000 to 9,000 cedis, depending on the currency, right, in Ghana. And even with that, not all private schools that are paying so much fees are able to afford it, not to talk about the average schools and then the government schools. That's the reason why we designed a low-cost kit. So these are kits based on open source hardware Arduino that allows students to build over 200 projects. They have a comprehensive guide and manual that guides them to do all that. We believe that in the 21st century, every student should learn how to code or have the skills and knowledge of coding.
You empower so many young, like-minded people. What are some of their concerns? What is it that they want to get out of this training that you offer?
The African students is highly curious. They want something to fuel their curiosity. And at times it's very sad that our traditional education do not encourage that. If you get so curious, so creative, you get shut down. The young ones are ambitious, maybe because they have access to technology that our parents did not have. They've seen young people making it, their success story, they have access to content, sort of information and all that. So they want education and learning to be more practical and interactive than reading books, writing exams, and passing. They want more out of education than just memorizing that. So I encourage every student to embrace STEM education because it's the only way they can have the skills that is needed to be able to work in a job and future which is not known yet.
Josh, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, Paul.
That was Joshua Agyemang, president of the Ghana STEM Network. That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you very much, Paul. Very informative Tech Report today. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday right here for his Tech Report. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.